Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that. But don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 284. We are covering movies coming out for the week of Friday, March 7th, 2025. Eric Holmes, how are you, buddy?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Got to watch Loaded for Bear.
I don't care about that. I want to care about. We'll get to Loaded for what? No, you're Loaded for Steaks. You left us on a cliffhanger. Oh, we're gonna get to Loaded for Bear.
Yeah.
How was your steaks last week? You were talking about. You told me how to cook steaks, which I don't.
Yes.
I'm horrible at steaks, but you had. How was your steak night last week over at where? What's the name of the place of your establishment you work at?
Skybox Lounge.
Skybox Lounge.
Yes.
You were giving us our episode, some steak tips on how to cook a steak. Sometimes simple is best. How did that night go? And then you were talking about peppers. What's been going on within the last several days regarding peppers? Tell our listeners.
Oh, we're going right into movie talk. Well, steak night went great. Smoked some pork last night, or not last night, the night before. And then I guess they had pulled pork. I wasn't there yesterday, so I don't know how that went. And then I got some bunch of peppers, put them on for a ferment. So in about a month, I'll have some more sauces. It's been a while since I made any hot sauces, so I'm making some more now, and it's gonna be good.
So an idiot like me who has
that's an official description, by the way.
Good. For an idiot like me who can't even pop a tart or a pop tart, what does fermenting peppers do that, say, I go out to my local market and get peppers and I crush them up or cut them up and put them on my, I don't know, sandwich or pasta? What is the fermentation process? What does it give it? What extra sauce or flavor does it give it?
It's kind of similar to like why you would like dry age a steak. It just it gets the good bacteria in there and it kind of alters the flavor a little bit, but alters it for the better. And then
do you notice there's a marked difference? Is there a huge difference since let's say you're tasting peppers, just fresh peppers, as far as the fermentation a month from now or whatnot?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's as different as like a grape to wine, but it's kind of similar thing. You're, just adding a bunch of bacteria and little, I don't know, little bits, bugs or whatever, but those bugs are damn tasty.
Speaking of bacteria, Bruce Purkey over at the Cinematic will have some more reviews for this episode. Do you like that? Like bacteria and Bruce Purkey? How about that word association? Was that a dig on Bruce Purkey on that? What do you think? We love Bruce Purkey. He will be reviewing the movies this week: Queen of the Ring and The Rule of Jenny Penn, and also Seven Veils. So if you want a very, I don't know, academic, but very insightful take on, again, Queen of the Ring, The Rule of Jenny Penn, and Seven Veils, please travel up the Cinem-Attic and meet Bruce Purkey, meet him halfway, where he will give you some great reviews of these three movies. I mean, Eric and I have kind of seen these movies as well, but I told Eric before we started the show, since Bruce Purkey's doing such a good job at Cinem-Attic, we can just go free. We can be like the freewheeling Bob Dylan and just do whatever we want on the first half. Right?
See ya.
yeah. Just start Cinem-Attic right now for the real reviews. I'm not saying that I'm just saying I'm kidding, Eric Holmes.
I would also mention, let's see, they had the Oscars Sunday.
Yes.
And a friend of the show was on the Oscars.
Who was on the Oscars? I don't have any friends.
Alan Maxon, the director of Alien Planet.
Yeah.
He was the sandworm in that sandworm bit on the Oscars.
That's amazing. Did you hit him up? Did you say good job? How did you find that out?
He's a friend of mine on Facebook, and they just posted that. I'm like, oh, that's freaking cool as hell. So
that is very good. Yeah. And how much? Very quick plug for his film. What do you love about? What was that movie again that he did? Alien
Planet.
What stands out? A couple years later, why did you love that movie so much?
It's got that Enemy Mine kind of flavor to it, but it's got a more of a low budget kind of feel, like Troma doing Enemy Mine. Although I don't think he likes the comparison to Enemy Mine, but it kind of is. But
okay, so that props to Alien Planet. I'm sure it's streaming wherever and digital on demand. I'm sure it's actually out on DVD.
You know what else is streaming?
Yes,
Let's start a cult. I just found out it was streaming on Hulu. I went to a friend of mine,
wow.
And we were just looking for something to watch, and it was like, Oh, hey, let's start a cult on Hulu. Let's watch that
That
again.
I think the great thing about what all three of us do at Cinematics is we review movies, but then there are people who don't want to listen to our podcast maybe until weeks later. For example, our buddy Joseph Bridges, he listens to Cinematics after the movies are out. Our Patreon member and close friend Angie Clark, sometimes she doesn't like listening to us when the just for these previews of these movies. She'd rather listen a week later. So maybe that's why really
Yeah.
different podcasts, like for example, Middle Class Film Class or the Film Vault, I mean, even though we get a jump on a lot of these movies over other podcasts, sometimes there's a give and take. But this is this is the price we pay. This is what we do. These are the movies we spotlight primarily indie-driven movies that are coming out on a given week. For this specific week, the movies covered are again Queen of the Ring, The Rule of Jenny Penn, by the way, which Eric Holmes will be reviewing in a few moments, Seven Veils, The Silent Planet, which I really enjoyed. Spoiler alert, I will be talking about that. And last but not least, Guns of Redemption, one of the also a running motif or not a theme or a thing of frustration that all three of us probably share is there are movies that we cover so many movies, Eric, that the proverbial rock is actually rolling right at us every week and we're trying to push it back because we have so much content. There are movies we're going to miss. What was that awesome movie, Rats? I still haven't seen it last week.
All
I'm
right,
so
is
sad.
good.
I'm so sad I haven't gotten to Rats yet. I think Eric Holmes will feel very bad because I'm looking at my Google Doc. He's not seen Guns of Redemption, and that's because he's been so busy watching other movies. Eric, Casper Van Dien, Jeff Fahey, right?
Yeah,
That and obviously, aren't you frustrated because you don't have the time for it?
a little bit. A
A
little bit.
little, a little
I
bit.
did have time for Loaded for Bear, which we should point out is on
Yes.
xolo.tv.
All right. And what is this? What is Loaded for Bear?
Loaded
Tell our
for
listeners.
Bear is a wonderful short written and directed by the immensely talented, thick-wienered, handsome,
Family Thick Wieners because he likes der Wiener Schnitzel. He likes hot dogs,
yes, all
specifically
that
Chicago
stuff,
dogs.
all that
He's a
stuff.
yeah. Yes. Go ahead. Keep
He
on going.
likes the thickest ones, and he has the thickest ones. And he's a great guy, and he made a wonderful short called Loaded for Bear. And you should go check it out. So you go to, I don't know if it's Zolo or Xolo, XOLO.tv. You have to sign up for it, which I did. And then I watched Loaded for Bear, and I just canceled right after.
Mm-hmm.
So do that. Otherwise, maybe it'll show up online somewhere else. But if you want to watch it right now, that's where you go to. And it is freaking cool.
Well, what happened? So the plot summary behind this short is this guy, I believe, what's his name? Ben? You don't want to say? You don't want to tease it? You don't just
So-
okay, well it's a short and to go see it? That's it?
Yeah, it's not that long. I wasn't.
Yeah, okay,
I,
if you
I
want
don't
to say
know what you
anything
say
about it.
about it because like there's a really cool thing in there, and then if you say like you run the risk of maybe saying too much, I think.
All right, okay, well it's called Loaded for
But
Bear.
yeah, Ben, his bosses, he
Uh-huh.
doesn't like them. They're very mean to him, and then
Right.
Ben does something to try to get back at them. Just
Okay.
leave it at that.
And then also there's an extra layer to this because the short is going to be the short is what is it? What do you call it? A proof of concept? Not a proof of concept. Just sort of a short is sort of this short is a appetizer to what Anderson Cowan wants to do. He wants to do a documentary and he also wants to make a narrative, which and do you want to elaborate on that? This is sort of a three-tiered process in a way.
Well, the problem with describing the narrative is then you would have to talk about the thing.
Okay.
But I like with the narrative that makes sense because there's a lot of movie there. With the short, I always hesitate to talk about really anything because it's so short that you should probably just go in. Although you probably listen to I've Got a Movie to Make, and I'm sure he gives away everything
Okay.
on there.
I've Got a Movie to Make is a sub mini pod that is part of the Film Vault community. If you want to actually learn more about Loaded for Bear, go to loadedforbeardoc.com, loadedforbeardoc.com, and that's the Film Vault. Eric Holmes, how dare you put a Film Vault shirt during the Cinematics podcast? But again, I've saw Loaded for Bear, and I'm gonna actually go by Eric's commands, and I'm not gonna say much about it. But it's a very ambitious project for our buddy Anderson Cowan. And I'll be honest, if I was not friends with Anderson and I just saw this cold, I would have really loved this short, and I do love this short. My only complaint regarding Loaded for Bear is I really want more of the people involved in this short. I want this to be a movie. I want this to be a documentary. I want this to happen overnight. But of course, that's not going to happen. But Anderson has created a very, very interesting and excellent short. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that is Loaded for
All
Bear.
right.
Eric, you got the first movie up. It's called The Rule of Jenny Penn, and it centers on this arrogant judge, Stephen Mortensen, played by Jeffrey Rush. He has a near fatal stroke. He's now confined to a retirement home, partially paralyzed, and he's resistant to the staff, and he's distant from his roommate. This guy Mortensen, he clashes with a seemingly nice resident named Dave, played by John Lithgow. But then this guy Dave secretly terrorizes the home with a sadistic game called, quote, The Rule of Jenny Penn, while wielding his dementia doll as an instrument of cruelty. This movie runs 103 minutes. It hits theaters March 7th. Eric Holmes, what else can you tell us about The Rule of Jenny Penn in your review?
This is a cool movie. What do I tell you about this? It's kind of a serial killer movie in an old folks home, because John Lithgow's the serial killer. Where I'm kind of torn is that I don't know that John Lithgow is the killer. I think, and this isn't like a twist at the end or anything. This is kind of like how the movie's sort of playing with his character. It seems unclear, at least to me, whether his character actually exists or if he's like what do you call it? Like he's death. Because people in retirement homes, they die. And so he's just, death with the sickle, but instead of a sickle, he's a crazy old man with a puppet going around taking him. Jeffrey Rush sees that John Lithgow's doing a bunch of things, and no one really listens to him. And then we get a part where Jeffrey Rush is like doing cognitive tests, which I should probably get one done today. Fail miserably at it, but he's doing a cognitive test and he seems to be passing it. But then like a camera goes to a different angle and you see like he's doing the clock and he's like writing the numbers like off the clock. So it's hard. This movie's pretty much should just be called Unreliable Narrator, because I don't think that we can really trust anything that we see on screen. But it's still kind of a cool take on this sort of thing, because they don't use it as a big twist or a big reveal. It's just kind of part of the story. So they, instead of using it as a twist, they get to really dive into what that means or how it affects these characters. And it's really interesting way to go about this.
Okay, The Rule of Jenny Penn. It's directed by, I wrote the guy's name down. It's co-written and directed by James Ashcroft. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 76% rating. Eric, what is your rating and final thoughts on The Rule of Jenny Penn?
I will do 4 stars. This is like kind of one of those that could probably go up on a rewatch, just because I like when I start getting in the mode or getting in the groove of this movie. It's one that I want to go back to and kind of see if like all the ideas that I had while watching it still hold water on a second viewing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is this movie scary? Is it gory? What is this? Is this worth watching in the theaters, that kind of thing?
It's not really scary. Actually, well, first of all, there's split diopters all over the place in this. And you got John Lithgow, and it's kind of De Palma-esque. I'm surprised this is not your favorite movie, but
oh yeah, no. This is I wasn't able to watch it. I've just been so crazy with other movies, as you know, with all of us have been crazy with so many different kind of movies. But yeah. So 4 stars, and is it worth? You might watch it down the road again, just to see.
And I think on a like a second viewing, this could go up from 4 stars. It's just that's where I'm at right now. But I think if I watch it again and then maybe again after that, and I never really have time to do that, but if I do, I would kind of already know what I'm getting into, so I would already know what to look for early on, and I think that would just enhance the viewing.
Okay, cool. So that is 4 stars for The Rule of Jenny Penn. Also, Bruce Purkey has his review of The Rule of Jenny Penn over at the Cinem-Attic. Next up is Queen of the Ring. It is directed by Ash Avildsen, and this movie running at 120 minutes. It's based on the true story of Mildred Burke, played by Emily Bett Rickards. I don't know how to pronounce her name. Emily Bett Rickards. Quote, in a time when pro wrestling for women was illegal all over the country, a small town single mother, and that is Mildred Burke, she embraces the danger to change the culture as she dominates America's most masculine sport to become the first $1 million female athlete in history. Josh Lucas plays her manager, Billy Wolf. Billy Wolf is a bit of a womanizer. He has a son, G-Bill, played by Tyler Posey. Francesca Eastwood co-stars as Mae Young, the iconic female wrestler. Also, another popular female wrestler is June Byers, and she is played by Kaylee Farmer. So yes, the aforementioned June Byers, Mae Young, and the main character Mildred Burke are the main wrestlers. Actually, this is Mildred Burke's story, but it's a great look at the foundation, the beginnings of female wrestling. And I feel this is a very educational movie, but it's also very fun. I think I'm trying to think of wrestling movies, but what surprised me about this 120-minute narrative is there's a lot of wrestling in this movie. There's a lot of fighting, and it's well done. Emily Bett Rickards and the other actresses do a great job at the wrestling moments. It captures the period of that time very well, and there's really good performances all around, especially Emily Bett Rickards as Mildred Burke. This is one of these movies. Also, Walton Goggins, it makes an appearance. It has some really great actors in this movie as well. Martin Kove from the Karate Kid films. He's in this as well as Cobra Kai. He's also in Queen of the Ring. And this is one of those movies that actually surprised me at how much, because when I saw the running time, I was thinking, oh, 2 hours, I'm not gonna really get through this. But this was surprisingly well done, well executed, and it's one of those things where it's a historical drama, but it's also an engaging look at this woman's journey. Even though she is an iconic wrestler, she had so many obstacles in her way, namely her manager, Billy Wolf, that you get to really dive into their destructive relationship and why Wolf, even though he made a huge impact in spotlighting female wrestlers, he had huge flaws. And very, very interesting movie. It's one of those movies, if it's available on streaming or I see it on Prime Video or Hulu or whatnot, I'll give it another watch just because of the value added storytelling. I was really surprised at how much I really enjoyed Queen of the Ring. 4 stars for me. And yeah, I think it's one of my big surprises. Are you a big wrestling guy, Eric? Were you ever a wrestling person? Did you ever watch it growing up?
I was when I was younger. I don't really watch it now, but
Yeah.
I mean, I like Glow, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll check this one out as well.
No, Queen of the Ring is really fantastic. And towards the end, where there is the ultimate showdown with Mildred Burke and her main rival, I'm not going to mention who the main rival is because that's a little bit of a spoiler. It's really well done and executed. And
What was that one with Florence Pugh?
I forgot, but it was produced by or executive produced by The Rock and Fighting for My Family, I believe. That's the name.
That was a good one. The wrestler. Yeah. That one's good. I mean, the wrestler hardly has any wrestling in it.
Yeah. But. Okay. So that is a definite recommend. Queen of the Ring. It hits theaters Friday, March 7th. Next up is Guns of Redemption. It's on digital, on demand, and in theaters March 7th. And this one is a first-rate Western. It stars Casper Van Dien as Luke. He's not even riding into town. He's working at a church for this priest played by Sean Astin. This man of God played by Sean Astin is trying to help Luke find his way because Luke, he has a definite dark past that he does not want to divulge to the preacher or the preacher's wife. But they take him in and they take care of him. And he's reading the Bible. He's become a man of faith, this guy Luke. But ultimately, when there is a very bad general, a Union general named General Bork, played by Jeff Fahey, he comes to the town, this little town, and he exacts vengeance on the town. General Bork, he has a very twisted logic on how to make a buck. Part of it is kidnapping or enslaving a bunch of young women who are from the South, and he uses them as entertainment for the Union soldiers. This is not a very good thing that General Bork does. Obviously, he's an evil man, and General Bork ultimately, his evil ways leads to a violent situation with Luke, again played by Casper Van Dien. And when that violent situation happens, Luke goes on a rampage, not a rampage. He goes on a focus mission on trying to take General Bork down. Running at 97 minutes. It's directed by a filmmaker I really love, Brian Skiba. He's the filmmaker behind The Second, a movie that starred Ryan Phillippe. He also directed a couple years ago, I think the movie was called Dead Man's Hand. And yeah, I really love this one as well. Sean Astin is really good as the preacher. And a lot of Westerns that I love, Guns of Redemption actually has the main character, Luke. He's trying to become a man of faith. So there's a lot of spirituality and religion in Guns of Redemption, but not to the point where it gets to be too preachy and too where you're going to call Guns of Redemption a faith-based film. It is not, but it's a really well done, tight Western, another tight Western from Brian Skiba, and it's 97 minutes. Again, it comes out digital, on demand, and in theaters March 7th. My rating is 4 stars. I haven't seen Casper Van Dien in a Western. I'm sure during his career he's done Westerns, but he's very good in the lead role. And of course, Jeff Fahey, who starred in just so many movies over the years that I've really loved. I mean, we can mention it. Silverado. What else? There's Lawnmower Man. What did I see recently? Body Parts? I forgot the name of the movie. Do you remember this movie called Body Parts? Or something like that?
It sounds familiar, but no.
No. He's Jeff Fahey's, I loved him from Lost. And yeah, there's so many great things about Guns of Redemption that it's definitely worth a watch in theaters. If you want to see a movie of scope, if you want to see a good Western, go check it out on the weekend. But it's also going to be available on digital and on demand March 7th.
So
Brian,
in Guns of Redemption, was there a part like at the very end where you find out that they were cannibals the whole time?
There is no cannibal. Can tell you right now, there is no cannibals. What is that a reference to? Is there a movie?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you.
Really? I'm thinking
it would be a spoiler if I told you what movie it was.
The David Arquette film?
No.
David and Guy Pearce. I forgot what that movie was. But Guns of Redemption is very good. And what's interesting about this is it's being released by Shout Studios this Friday. A month from now, Brian Skiba has another Western coming out with Nicolas Cage, Heather Graham, and Stephen Dorff called Gunslingers. And I'm so all over that movie as well. So I'm so excited about that movie.
Greg, go back, say that again, but slower.
Exactly, right? It's going to be so much. I also have to mention there is some young actresses in here, Caitlin Kemp and Sienna Bjornerud, and they play just a couple of the young girls who are held captive in this movie. They do a good job as well. It's one of those movies that I can watch again and again. Again, I'm a huge Western fan, and you can actually check out my interviews with Casper Van Dien, Brian Skiba, and Jeff Fahey over at deepeststream.com. All right, so next up is a movie called Seven Veils. Eric, what can you tell us about this movie?
It's really good. There you go.
There you go. Tell us about it. Plot.
No, so Amanda Seyfried, she's doing the
Salome.
Salome? Yeah.
Yeah.
She's doing a stage performance of that. And then as she's doing it, as she's like directing it and putting it together, you get to see her kind of deal with tough actors, deal with the producers, like you kind of get to watch her sort of navigate the chaos that she put herself into. As she's doing that, you get a little bit of a little backstory, like of hers, like kind of sprinkled in there. Then about, I'd say maybe halfway through, among all the other problems that she has to deal with, a big problem comes up, and they kind of have to deal with that. But then she's so tunneling on just getting the play done that I don't know what I should say after that. We'll just say a big event happens about halfway through that they need to contend with, and then the rest of the movie's sort of, people showing their true colors after that. And it's
Oh,
the one thing I kind of wish that I had going into this was some working knowledge of Salome because I don't. But
right.
as they're making the stage play, and then they're like practicing it, they seem to clip out certain aspects of Salome that seem to reflect what's going on in the character's actual life. And I wonder, not being familiar with Salome, I don't know, but I wonder if this like a adaptation with Nicolas Cage, where like they're adapting the book by making someone adapting the book. I wonder if there's like some of that in here. But it also has a little bit of Inland Empire to it. It's not nearly like it doesn't even come close to being as weird as Inland Empire, but it's got that kind of how Inland Empire is like this is a cursed movie that we're making, and then so Laura Dern just kind of goes crazy as they make the movie. There's a little bit of that here, but yeah.
Does the crazy stuff or the surreal elements do they work in Seven Veils? Does that layer
That's
good?
just it. The surreal stuff's in Inland Empire. It's not in this, but it still has that same kind of idea that we're doing a cursed play. Instead of a cursed movie, we're doing a cursed play. And when that thing happens about halfway through, that's kind of that might make a little more sense, I guess, if you watch it.
Mm.
But
Yeah. How's Amanda Seyfried? I think she worked with Adam Egoyan previously. I think the movie was called Chloe, but how's she in the movie?
I mean, everyone's great in it because they got to play their character, and then so Amanda Seyfried, she's the director, so she's never on stage like playing the character for I guess it'd be an opera because they sing a lot. But anyway, all the rest of the actors like they're good at their characters, and then you see them on stage like rehearsing their parts, and that's fun to watch. What was that one we saw? That World War II one where they're going through all the stuff, and then they end up on a stage.
Oh, right. Love something. Not Love Lies
Love
Bleeding.
Love
Love.
finds a room.
Yes, Eric. Very good. Love Fine. That's
Yeah.
such a great movie. No one's seen that movie. It's
But yeah, similar to that, where you get to watch the people play the characters and then the characters are playing their characters on stage. It's kind of fun watching, actors kind of play with that a little bit.
Mm.
But yeah, Seven Veils. This is a really good movie.
Is it pretentious or is it a little bit no, even though you don't
No, it's especially the second half is very pointed, I think, in what it's trying to say. I
Okay.
just don't want to give it away here, because when that part popped up, I was like, "Oh, this is what this is now." Okay, cool.
Oh, very good. Very good. Have you seen a lot of his movies? Like The Sweet Hereafter and
I saw what was it? The Captive, the one with Ryan Reynolds.
The Captive.
Yeah, I didn't know what
That's
that was when I saw it because my sister was watching. I just walked in like a little bit, like 15 minutes or so into the movie, and I
yeah.
like that a lot. I didn't even know that was him
Yeah. You mentioned that to
until
Adam during the interview.
yeah, until
That's
he
very
was
good.
talking about that movie. It's like, oh, that one. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He's also you should watch Exotica. That's a very memorable movie. And the sweet both Exotic and The Sweet Hereafter are
Yeah.
really good. But he's a very celebrated filmmaker. And what
I'm kind of curious why this is coming out in March. This seems like one of those movies that would be like that they would put out towards the end of the year and do like
uh
the
award,
Oscar bait kind
who
of stuff.
who knows?
I mean, I hate calling this Oscar bait because means it sounds like pretentious and full of itself, which is kind of what you're alluding to. And this is not. It's just a
Mm.
really good movie.
Okay, really good movie. What is your rating on Seven Veils? Again, in theaters March 7th on Friday.
I'll go. Oh, shoot. You know what? Similar to the role of Jenny Penn, I
Hmm?
will go 4.5, but this could go up. And
Four
I think if I'd be curious to see if someone watches like goes to operas or plays or what, if they're familiar with Salome, I'd be curious to know what they think of this movie because I'm guessing that they're going to get a lot more out of it than I did,
but
and
still
I
you get
already
four
got.
and a half. Yeah, you loved it so
Oh yeah,
much.
oh yeah. But I'm
Mm.
saying like if you already had that working knowledge, you kind of got that feather in your cap when you're going into this, you know a little bit more than I do. And
Yeah.
so maybe Well, but then again, that could go the other way. It'd be like, I'm deeply familiar with Salome, and this movie holds no candle to that. And it
Yeah.
could go the other way too. I have no idea, but I get the sense that they're using that play and kind of connecting it with the character stories in this.
Okay, so that is 4.5 stars from Eric Holmes, 4 7 Veils. Bruce Purkey has also seen it, so check out his review in a few moments over at the Cinematic. Last but not least is a movie called The Silent Planet. Yes, The Silent Planet sounds like a Discovery Channel type of movie, but it's not. It centers on an aging convict played by Elias. I
Elias
like the
Koteas,
Elias Koteas. Yes, he's a great actor. He's serving out
Casey
a
Jones from the Ninja Turtles movie,
Oh, yes, yeah, okay, very cool. And he's been in the Thin Red Line. He's been in so many different movies.
Zodiac.
Okay, Zodiac. Okay, so you like Koteas a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yes, he's great, great actor, great character actor, and he can also be a lead. He's a co-lead in The Silent Planet, and he plays the aforementioned aging convict. He's alone, seemingly alone on a distant planet, and he's mining minerals for to send back to Earth. And lo and behold, one day there's a new prisoner who comes into that planet. That prisoner is played by Brianna Middleton. You might have seen Middleton in the Apple TV Plus film Sharper a couple of years ago. You might have seen Brianna Middleton as one of the ensemble actors in the movie The Inheritance. Eric Holmes, she was in The Inheritance. She was one of those people. She was actually one of the leads in the movie because if you see how The Inheritance goes, there's a lot of it's sort of like, and then there were non-family members who are slowly but surely, well, they're under the gun and being eliminated. But she plays a very big role in The Inheritance. We both love that movie. Me and Eric Holmes do. But I still haven't seen Sharper yet. But Brianna Middleton, she is a new prisoner in the Silent Planet. And really, the movie centers on how they're trying to get along with each other. But the problem is, they're both sent to the reason why they're sent into this planet, into this silent planet, is they have crimes that they have committed in the past. And will their criminal past and their traumatic past lead to a sort of separation or the lack of a friendship in the present? Will this affect their friendship or their getting to know you vibes in the silent planet? There are different people in this movie, but they're relegated to flashbacks. So ultimately, this is a two-hander from director writer Jeffrey St. Jules. When I mentioned the planet, the movie does the set design and production design for the Silent Planet for whatever couple of dollars they had to make the movie. They do a great job. The filmmaker does a great job at making this movie look like not a completely expensive movie, but it's a beautiful movie to look at. And it actually posits a lot of questions about accountability and life responsibility. And Eric was mentioning how much he loves Elias Koteas. He's a great actor. I love Middleton too. I just recently interviewed her. She's very insightful. So watching them sort of have a chess match back and forth until the third act when a lot of action happens. And I won't say what kind of action happens. Yeah, it's a very interesting movie. I really enjoyed The Silent Planet. The only caveat though is the ending is some people might feel the ending is a bit muted, but I thought the ending was actually really well done for The Silent Planet. I hate calling myself 4 star Greg, but The Silent Planet for me gets 4 stars. This is
I mean, this has
another
been a 4-star show so far.
it's a
Every
four
reason, 4
star
stars.
experience for me. Again, it's directed and written by Jeffrey St. Jules. Both Koteas and Middleton are fantastic in their respective roles. Again, some people might push back on the muted ending, and when you have two-handers like this, people will say, "Oh, come on, it's a move. The story takes its time to breathe. It is a slow burn, but the good news is it's a slow burn amidst this sci-fi landscape, which even with an indie budget, they do a really good job with the visuals. I don't know his name, Eric Holmes, but a little bit of a trivia for this episode is the cinematographer of The Silent Planet is also the cinematographer of Seven Veils. So I don't think that's
Oh,
ever happened to us.
well,
So that's pretty cool.
Well, how about that?
Yeah, and I'm,
It's
I'm
pretty
sure
good.
I'm sure he had the cinematographer. I don't even know if it's a he or she. He or she had the same, probably a bigger budget on Seven Veils and
Paul Sarosi.
Paul Rossi. So thank you,
Sarossi,
Eric.
maybe?
Okay, well, very talented DP, at least from the Silent Planet, and I'm sure he did a good job in Seven Veils. I'm assuming it looks good. The movie looks good, right? So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, all right.
Yeah, this one didn't look bad either. I didn't finish watching it, but I watched, say, about 30 minutes of it, I think.
Okay, of the Silent Planet. So for me, again, four
Yeah.
stars for the Silent Planet. It will be available on digital Friday, March 7th. So 4 stars for the Silent Planet, 4.5 stars from Seven Veils from Eric. Let me look. Guns of Redemption, 4 stars. Really, really awesome Western. I'm so excited for Gunslingers as well. The Rule of Jenny Penn, Eric gave it 4 stars. And Queen of the Ring,
See if
I
that's got
gave
the
it
same
4 stars.
cinematographer as well.
Yeah, right. So that's it. We both Eric and I really recommend all of the movies that are coming out this Friday.
Yes.
Again,
Especially Loaded for Bear.
especially Loaded for Bear. Again, it's one of these things that if you don't know the whole Anderson Cowan, the Film Vault universe, and what After Disaster, and I'm gonna put Cinematics because he was a co-creator of Cinematics as well. He's a very passionate filmmaker. He's not just a friend of the show. He's a very close friend of mine, and close friend of Eric's. And but throw all that aside, Lodo for Bear really, really works, and I'm so excited to see what comes out of this short. I hope this short really wins and gets a lot of momentum. It's a it's a beautiful little short. I was surprised.
Greg,
Eric, yeah.
the short exists. I think it's already won.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes, you're right. It has
Every
already won.
everything here on out is gravy.
Well, Eric, I don't know if you can even say this, but you saw different iterations of the short. Did you like the way it ended up? Because you saw different rough
The
cuts, right?
version that's out now is the best version I've seen.
Oh, all right. Very, very good.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to hand it off over to Bruce Purkey over at the Cinematic. Eric, do you want to say anything else before we get out of here? Oh, I forgot. Cinematics Patreon members, for this month of March, we are spotlighting the year 2001. I want to get, this is what, March 5th.
It'll be a space odyssey.
It'll be yes, it'll be a very good Eric Holmes. It'll be a we should actually put a Space Odyssey as one of our picks. But please, Patreon members, help us this month and help us pick 2 movies to spotlight for the year 2001. Okay, so Eric Holmes, whatever you want to
Yeah.
say.
Lovey Anderson. Go watch Loaded for Bear. And in a month from now, I'll have hot sauces. So if you want to come to Colorado Springs and go to a Skybox Lounge, I will have hot sauces and delicious meats to go with the delicious hot sauces. And oh yeah, Alan Maxon is the sandworm on the Oscars.
Yeah,
Congratulate him for that.
congratulate Alan Baxter. That's pretty cool.
But
All right. Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing something, but I can't think of what it is.
Okay. No worries.
but,
No
yeah.
worries. Yeah.
Oh, Let's Start a Cult on Hulu. Go watch that. That movie's funny as hell.
100%. And of course, if you want to listen to our Cinematics episode without ads, please either hit us up on, we do that for Patreon, for our Patreon members, and we also do it for our Cinematics YouTube subscribers. So please subscribe to our Cinematics YouTube channel for that. And without further ado, here is Bruce Purkey. By the way, I was going to say here's Claire, but I've got to find that audio file. Once I get Claire again on the weekend, I'm going to record her. But anyways, here's Bruce.
Well, well, well. Here we are again in the attic doing some cinema stuff, aka the Cinem-Attic, and here to talk about some new movies again. Once again, I look at the show sheet that Greg has set up, and there's like, I don't know, 8 movies on there. I've seen 3, so I feel like I've not seen as much as I should have seen, but that was the Oscars weekend, so, you know, it was busy, lots of stuff to try to get done. And congratulations on the Oscars. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff won this year, at least in my opinion. More independent-minded movies made it. Of course, that'll mean their ratings are probably worse than ever, but that's okay. We are happy, or I don't know about you guys, but Anora is a pretty great movie, so I was not mad at that. Obviously, The Substance won a few things, which I love. A little bit of a disappointment that Demi Moore didn't win, but also I thought it was just kind of really poetic and fitting that I could imagine Demi Moore laying on a tile floor somewhere, while her younger version of herself was out there in the form of Mikey Madison and getting the Academy Award for Best Actress. She's the younger, better, more beautiful version of Demi Moore now, right? Whatever. You get my point. And we also had Flo winning the Best Animated Feature. And of course, that was my number 2 movie of the year. And I think that to think about Flo winning that, I was trying to think about this, like how crazy that is. That would be, what would that be like? Be like the guys who made like, I don't know, did the special effects for the original Evil Dead that year, winning the makeup effects award, against, all the guys who did like Star Wars and, like these giant mega, to be an animation little indie movie that's pretty much done by one dude in Latvia and to win the biggest award for that category against, the Pixars and all these other Disneys and all these mega animation studios. That's something. I know it's a blow against them too, right? But it's really a good sign for indie cinema that there's some great stuff out there. You just have to look for it, as we always do here in CinemAddicts, to bring it back to CinemAddicts. So the problem with us is, and the good thing about us is, well, a lot of times we're giving you weird indie movies that you may not have heard of or may not hear of right away, unless you live in like a big city like New York or LA. But if you put a note down on the ones that we really love and you're interested in those and you keep an eye out for them, you just might find one of your favorite movies of the year that you wouldn't hear about otherwise. That is my selling point for us. For example, last week, Rats is slowly making its tour around the U.S. in theaters. So if you live in a town with an independent movie theater, you will probably have a chance to see Rats, and it'll probably be for one night because it's kind of doing one of those tours. So I would go look up Rats official, Rats with an exclamation point official, and see if it's coming near you soon. It's not coming near me because I'm really in the boonies. The closest it gets to me is Knoxville, Tennessee, but a lot of other people would have a chance if they look out for it. Okay, I have 3 screeners this week. I've got The Rule of Jenny Penn. I think I'm the only one who watched it, which is sad because I would love to have heard the reactions of the 2 other guys here, or at least one of them, because I think they might have kind of missed out on that one. Queen of the Ring is the other movie, and then Seven Veils. I also have, I was going to do 2 recommends. I was going to do an anti-recommend for The Monkey because I definitely did not enjoy it as much as everybody else, even though I'm a pretty big Oz Perkins fan. This one didn't hit for me, so I'm going to leave it at that. We don't need to dwell on it. If you want to go see The Monkey, you're going to go see The Monkey. It's nothing. It's not a big deal either way. If it hits your tone and you think you kind of like the fun, quirky, extra quirky comedy horror of it, great. But comedy horror is a hard tone to hit for everybody, and it just didn't hit for me. So sorry, Oz, you missed this time, but you've hit on other times that I've liked. So the other recommendation I'll have this week is an Oscar-nominated short from this year called Incident. And I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of this. So let me take a sip of my coffee, which is really gross for you guys who don't want to hear this. Tasty. Okay. The Rule of Jenny Penn, directed by James Ashcroft. Now, or is it Ashcroft? I wrote it down. Who knows? They also directed Coming Home in the Dark, which you may not have heard about, but it's a nasty little thriller horror movie from about, I want to say, 5 to 6 years ago. And it has a very memorable, those movies where people are out in the woods or out in nature and then they get someone, encounters them and it becomes immediately dangerous. Deliverance would be one that comes immediately to mind. But there's been versions of this before. Wolf Creek would be another one. This is kind of one of those where it's a family, and I think I want to say it's in New Zealand because this movie, it takes place in New Zealand as well. The Rule of Jenny Penn, that is. So I'm thinking that Coming Home in the Dark is one of those movies that was in New Zealand, but a family gets two strangers kind of approach them, and it becomes a harrowing slash disturbing, not a home invasion per se, because they're out in nature, but it's kind of that feel. A pretty effective little thriller. So what is the rule of Jenny Penn? Well, first of all, out of the gate, two great actors just getting to just chew the scenery as kind of co-leads is not something you see much these days. This is a movie, if made in the late 50s, early 60s, would have a Betty Davis and Joan Crawford in it, just to kind of give you a tone. But instead, we get a John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush. So pretty good combo, you might say, right? So John Lithgow is Dave and Stefan is Jeffrey Rush. At the beginning of the movie, Jeffrey Rush, we see, is a judge, and he seems to be a pretty stern, no nonsense, putting down the rule of law kind of judge. He's in court, he's giving a ruling, and you see he's having a little bit of he's kind of having some mental lapses, like in the middle of giving his decision, and he, to the point that he collapses, and you find out he's had a stroke. So Jeffrey Rush's character, pretty much you smash cut, and he wakes up, and he's in an old folks home, there to recover, to hopefully get his mobility back, because his right side's kind of messed up. He doesn't have great mobility anymore, but his mentality, his mental factors are very sharp. He's right there. He's as caustic and cynical as always, and analytical, and of course hating the fact that he's in this old folks home where he's looking around at everybody as if they're kind of like addled and almost looking down at them, like not really worthy of him. That's kind of his attitude. So he's not going to make the most friends right out of the gate, as you might think. And while he's there, he's looking around the room. I forget, he might be sitting at a table with someone else. And at the far end of the room, you see various people. And someone mentions something like, yeah, some people get here and they just lose it. Some people get here and they phase out. Some people get here and they regress to their childhood. And there's two or three of these older people sitting against the wall with like dolls and stuff. And one of them is John Lithgow. And he's got a baby doll on his hand. Now, when I say on his hand, if you imagine a baby doll with the bottom half gone, so that you can put the top half of the doll, the torso and the arms and the head kind of on your hand like a puppet, but it doesn't like have moving mouth or anything. It's just a baby doll that you're using kind of like a puppet. That's essentially what he has on his hand all the time. And he'll talk with it sometimes, and sometimes he'll just talk with his voice. Now you're thinking to yourself, if you look at the poster of this movie and you just hear that basic setup that I gave you, you're like, oh, is this doll possessed? Is this an evil doll movie? We just had an evil monkey movie. Now we have an evil doll movie. No, this is not an evil doll movie. When I think about this, there's nothing supernatural about this movie whatsoever. It isn't really even a horror movie. So I think there are going to be a lot of people that go into it thinking that and might be disappointed by it. So I'm going to tell you, for me, the best approach to this movie, I think, is to think of it like a prison movie. Think of the classic prison movie where you have a new prisoner convicted, gets sent to the high security prison, right? And he's the new guy in town. And when he gets there, pretty quickly, he's trying to get the lay of the land. He's trying to figure out how to survive in this hellish situation, because this old folks home is kind of analogous to hell, apparently, because they definitely make it look terrible. And you're in this prison, and when you're there, you find out who's the head dude, who's the guy that you have to watch out for, and you're going to either have to battle for supremacy, or you're going to be under that person's gaze and you have to submit to them. And if you don't, you're in for it. And that is kind of how this movie operates, because John Lithgow's character, with his puppet, quote, Jenny Penn, he terrorizes everybody. And the people there are in cowering fear of him. And he plays one of the best vile villains I've seen in quite a while. A vile villain, that's probably the same thing. One of the best ones I've seen in quite a while. And their literal battle of, I guess, in every way, of wills and of just physically, is really what the movie's all about. and your enjoyment is gonna rise or fall depending on how much you enjoy that battle. I will say the denouement, the way this concludes, is a little bit anticlimactic, but considering who they are and their situation, it is appropriate. It's just like you kind of feel like you want this big giant, you know, one-on-one duel or something, and it doesn't kind of go down quite that way. But the battle to get there is to me, it's worth the journey. So I will give. I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie. It's not like the most quote fun movie. It's not the most thrilling movie. Like I said, it's more of like a character battle. So in that aspect, it's really really good. But I'll probably go 4 stars because I can imagine a version of this. It's much more like crowd pleasing and quote fun and thrilling and just more enjoyable to go back to. But as an experience, I still think it's worth it. And that's my 4 star rating for The Rule of Jenny Penn. I don't think it's going to get a huge wide release probably, but if you like those 2 actors and you kind of miss seeing them just really go for it, this is a quite fun vehicle for them, I do believe. Okay, what else do we got here? We have The Queen of the Ring. The Queen of the Ring, directed by Ash Avildsen. I've got a few known people here. Playing Mildred Burke, we have Emily Bett Rickards. Billy Wolf is played by Josh Lucas. G. Bill, which is I think his kid, is played by Tyler Posey. I did not look up, is that relation to Parker Posey? I don't think so, but anyway, Posey is kind of a name you don't see a lot. Also, as Jack Pfeffer, you've got Walton Goggins, and of course, Walton Goggins is always good when he pops up. He can pop up in everything from big, well-known movies to little indie movies, so it's good to see him no matter when he shows up. Anyway, basically, this is the best way to describe this is a biopic. It's a sports biopic about Mildred Burke, and if you don't know who Mildred Burke is, which I did not know who Mildred Burke is or was, I guess you'd say, because I think she's passed by now. Mildred Burke was one of the first, if not the first, massively popular women wrestlers in the United States. And it basically starts from the early part of the 1900s. I think by the time she gets to her heyday, it's the 50s. And I think when it starts, it must be the 20s or 30s. I didn't write it down. It's a lot of times in the South. And it's a time period where women wrestling was actually illegal. And it varied from state to state. Like some states, women could wrestle men, but they couldn't wrestle other women. Some states, I think women couldn't wrestle at all. So at that time, it was very much a kind of a niche underground sort of sport. I think they'd be, wrestling a lot at like a carnival that would travel through town or something. You wouldn't see them in an actual venue. Anyway, when we meet Mildred at the beginning of this movie, she's working at a diner. She's a single mom, very scrappy, and she goes to one of these kind of tent circusy kind of things and sees a wrestling match that involves what's his name? Billy Wolf. Yeah, that involves Billy Wolf, who's kind of a heel, and she said immediately is like, I want to be that. I want to be not the heel per se, but I want to be in that spotlight. I want to be wrestling, which is not the dream that you think most women would have now or then, but she's just her own thing. She liked what she liked. And of course, immediately he's hitting on her because he thinks she's just a, cute, good-looking woman in a diner, but she's serious about wrestling, and so it begins. And other than that, this is a pretty standard biopic. I mean, it doesn't go very experimental ways. It pretty much is just going to follow her career from that point forward. Her ups and downs, her possible romance or lack of romance with Billy Wolf, her business dealings, how she is either mistreated or kind of, underestimated as being a woman in that industry, of course, and kind of just how it kind of led to the rise of just professional wrestling in that era. Because there was a big, kind of a fairly big professional wrestling fandom in the 50s. And there's a few famous people that came out of that. And of course, I think Senior McMahon, Ed McMahon, do I get the name right? No, that's Ed McMahon is Johnny Carson. Jim McMahon? I forget the name now. You know the guy. The guy from the WWF, WWE, he is the son of a famous wrestling guy from that time period who makes a brief appearance in this movie. But you pretty much stick with the Walter Goggins character, who's like another kind of a wrestling promoter, and Billy Wolf, who becomes a wrestling promoter, and also just kind of the way they start gathering this troupe of women wrestlers, and kind of like Glow, you get a whole batch of characters, and you kind of see how they make it or don't make it in the world. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty entertaining, straightforward, entertaining movie. It is pretty long. It's over 2 hours. Try to give the epic of her life. I think it probably could have been cut a little bit. I think it's a little bit long for me. It kind of feels a little more like a TV, movie in that aspect. But overall entertaining and overall interesting to me. I just think it's not gonna blow you away. It's not anything super, super duper exciting. I think her character is interesting, but I don't think the story is crazy. It's like I said, it's nothing too unexpected. I'll probably go 3 stars on this. It's definitely worth recommending. I think depending on your interest in this sort of thing, you might love it more or not like it at all. If you just don't like biopics and you don't like this kind of middle of the road sort of movie, then it just may not work whatsoever for you. But for me, I'd say it's worth recommending. 3 stars. Okay, the last one I've got for screeners is Seven Veils by Atom Egoyan. I think I said his name right. I've seen him forever. I always want to say Adam Egoyan, or whatever. I think it's Egoyan. And even though I've seen quite a few of his movies, and he's a very famous indie director from Canada, I do believe. I don't know if I've ever figured out how to say his name. Famously, I guess he has got a lot of movies, but the ones I've seen are probably kind of his big hitters, the ones that have got a lot of more press, I think, than some of his other movies. I've seen Exotica, and that was back in the 90s, I want to say, and The Sweet Hereafter, which I believe for me was been the favorite thing I've seen by him, including this movie. The Sweet Hereafter, I remember being really good with Sarah Polley, I do believe, and Chloe, which I think he made in the mid teens. Yeah, I think he did. I could be wrong about that. With Amanda Seyfried. Seyfried? Never know how to say her name either. He made Chloe with her, and she's in this movie as well. So anyway, this Adam Egoyan movie, and this basically takes place in the opera in Canada, and they're basically remounting a production of Salome, which is, of course, the story of the woman who got John the Baptist's head and blah, blah, blah. And you can look up the whole story. But luckily for this movie, as part of the exposition that occurs, they kind of give you a recap of what the basic story of the opera is. Because if you're like me, you're not an opera fan, you're not opera literate, you would not necessarily know what this is about. But you may have heard about the Dance of the Seven Veils, which of course is part of that story. So Janine is Amanda Seyfried. Clea is Rebecca Lydiard. And then there's a bunch of other people in here as well. I'm not going to list all the actors. Let's just say the basic concept of this is Janine is remounting a production at this opera company of Salome. And they're doing it kind of in honor of the longtime producer who did a bunch of operas there and who's passed away, right? And his wife, as part of a tribute to him, wants to make sure that, they remount this one of the best productions he ever had. And Janine had been one of his proteges, and to bring her back to do it would be like this great honor, right? And as part of this, when she's back there, she starts to kind of relive her past and some of the dramas that she had, because basically she had a fling with this guy who's now dead. So she's reliving that, and then whether she can be, famous, and whether she can produce the thing he produced and make it her own, or whether she's constantly going to be in the shadow of his way that he did it, and people telling her how she has to do it versus how she wants to do it. That's part of it. There's various subplots about her being on a break from her marriage. There's subplots about how her father may have had some really inappropriate training of her into the world of opera, and possibly some kind of abuse of her to get her to that point of fame when she was a child, and there's a lot of hints there, and how she's dealing with those memories, and how those informed the original production of Salome, and how they informed this production of Salome, and how she's working through her demons by making some, now there's the subplot of a woman who's making the fake head they use in the opera, and how that's a whole subplot of her relationship with the new divas that are in town, do this production of this opera. Okay, does this sound melodramatic? You kind of rolling your eyes? Or what are you talking about, Bruce? What is this movie? What is this? Well, it's pretty melodramatic, but I mean, I guess that isn't wholly inappropriate if you're watching operas and you love operas. Once again, as a non-opera fan, this is my outside view of operas. My feeling about operas is that they are very melodramatic. That's kind of part of the form, part of the art form. It's everything's bigger than life. The emotions are bigger than life. They're singing about the emotions that are bigger than life. It's, it's very dramatic lighting and artistic interpretations, reinterpretations of classic things done in a new way. And, everybody's, really into their artisticness. So I think that there's an element of that here that's mirroring the kind of stuff you see in opera happening behind the scenes being really that way. And it's also people, feeling themselves as artists with capital A's, and we are artists. Look at what we're doing. There's lots of voiceovers, and like they're doing podcasts, talk about, what they're, how they're interpreting it and how important this is and how blah, blah, blah. So I guess to some degree it could be somewhat of a satire of that world, but I don't think it is. It doesn't really feel like a satire to me. It feels like it's taking itself pretty seriously, as seriously as the people inside of it, which is melodramatic in its own right. And I guess you're getting the impression, right? Like, does Bruce like this or does he not like this? You know, I don't really like it. I guess for me, it's really overwrought. Everything is and once again, I get it. I know this is part of the scene and is part of the point of the movie, but I don't really enjoy opera on its face most of the time. And I'm kind of weird. I like musicals. I'm someone who does enjoy musicals, but opera never has really quite worked for me. It's something about the artifice of how it's presented, and like the overblown nature of it. And the actual movie behind the opera in this is kind of the same. It doesn't, it just, everything seems very obvious. That's that way to put it. So she's supposed to be discovering her hidden demons and also presenting, maybe unknowingly, a lot of the drama that she's working through by the way she's acting out against the people in this production. And she's kind of becoming this very overtly aggressive producer and just like pushing people in ways that are just kind of unreasonable because she wants to get her vision on screen, that kind of a thing, get her vision on the stage. And of course, by doing that, she's unleashing the true inner issues that she's having about her past with the old producer and with her father. You get it? It's kind of like, okay, I get it. Ooh, and how does it like mirror the story of Salome? So to me, it's all very, very like metaphor with a capital META. It's very, very in your face. And that just didn't work for me. Not terrible. Everyone does a decent job. I mean, it's well produced, like the opera, well produced. In fact, I think they even use actual opera people. They must, because they're great singers, and they have footage from the actual older production of that actual opera, and then this production of that actual opera. So there's some meta aspects there that are okay, but overall, I just wasn't very entertained by it. So I can't really recommend it. But it's not terrible. It's not like a 1 star or 2 star. I'll probably like a 2.5. That's like the very middle of the road. Like this one absolutely depends on your love of opera and over the board, overboard, like kind of like narratives. You might just go head over heels over this. And I could see that happening for some people. But boy, oh boy, for me, it's a flat line, 2.5. 2.5. Okay, last but not least, and I got to look at my notes for this one because I didn't write them down correctly. This is the Oscar week, so as most people that are into movies, at least, we catch up on some sort of Oscar stuff we missed. I didn't do much of that this year, but I did catch one Oscar short documentary. And I think it's because I was in Letterboxd and I saw that, I think Ken Cunningham, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I thought I saw that he had watched this and gave it a really high rating. And I was like, okay, well, I want to check that out. And that is Incident, documentary short, about 30 minutes long, directed by Bill Morrison. And it's about an incident that took place in Chicago in 2018. And what's interesting about this is the way it's presented to us. So, for example, it's an unfortunately common story, far too common story, that there is a person that gets stopped for whatever reason by the police and they get shot. And often it's a black person getting shot by a white cop or by a cop at least, and or killed in some other way. And then obviously this has become a huge social hot button issue. So this is a version of that actually occurred. But what is very interesting about it is told with no voiceover, only a little bit of narrative information given to us through text. And then everything else is just presented pretty much in real time. And what I mean by that is they have multiple sources for footage of this incident. They have like a CCTV camera across the street from where it occurred. And from what it looks like, because it moves and it zooms in, it looks like it's controllable, probably by the police. So it's like a traffic cam kind of a deal, where it's across these railroad tracks, across the street, probably 1,000 yards from this area of the street where the incident occurs. But it's kind of aiming that direction. And the little bit of narrative we gives kind of the background of the climate, the kind of the social climate of this area of Chicago, how the tensions were already high based on a previous police incident from a few years ago that had just recently got a court ruling, and how there was a few other legal things that allowed things like, for example, they talk about, there's a little note saying something about this is one of the few areas or states where you're required to have, I think, a slip of paper or like a kind of like an ID that shows that you are allowed to carry a concealed weapon. That comes into play. So you've got the CCTV footage, and then you've got body cam footage, and you've got dash cam footage, all from police officers' points of view. And what happens is you set up the scene, you know something's going to happen because you know that's why you're watching this documentary short. So you see before the events, and you're just essentially watching from kind of a bird's eye view and from the body cam view, just a street scene where there's multiple police officers kind of just patrolling this area of the street, but you know something's going to happen. You watch the incident happen, and it happens very quickly. And that's one of the things always that becomes an issue, right? Is that you have footage of some one of these scenes and you see it, you know, like Rodney King, you see it 1,000 times. And then depending on your political point of view, you can say, oh, look there, it's one way. Or you can look at it and go, hey, it's the other way. But in the moment, it's so fast that you can doubt what it truly is as the people who are involved and as someone watching it, right? You're like, wait, did I see what I thought I saw or didn't I see what I thought I saw? One of the really interesting things right out the gate to me about this documentary is it doesn't go back and re-show you that footage. It shows you the points of view, lets you see it once, and then probably the last 20 minutes of this is the aftermath. And what they do is, though, is that many times during this documentary, most of the time during this documentary, it's split screen 3 to 4, maybe even 5, but probably like 4 to 3 ways, a lot of it. So you'll be seeing the body cams, the people involved in the shooting, the officers that were involved, what they're doing and what they're saying and where they're going, the officers that are staying behind at the scene with the crowd and what they're seeing and the crowd that they're seeing from their point of view and what the crowd is saying. You'll see the bird's eye view that we talked about before and what it's seeing. And all of this is synced up to happen basically in real time. So if this thing is 30 minutes long, you probably have about 5 minutes before the incident itself, which takes just a few seconds, which of course is the shooting of this man. Not a surprise. That's not a spoiler per se. And then you have the approximately 20 minutes after the incident and just what happens in that scene and lets you just watch it. And it's just it's quite affecting. It's affecting not only in just the actual occurrence, but just watching the scramble, the way that the intensification of emotions and the intensification of the anger on one side and the immediate attempts to justify and to recalibrate the story on the police side. And then while the crowd side is just immediately gathering and immediately angry and immediately telling people like, wait, this is this guy. He wasn't one of these people. He wasn't a bad guy. How did this happen? This is what you do to us, that kind of a thing. So it's a really effective and really fascinating documentary. And I think about the perfect length for something like this. It doesn't just dwell and stretch out on it. It gives you the incident itself and the short aftermath and lets you just see what that is. And I think that's quite effective. Where can you see this? You said, Bruce. You can stream it in quite a few places. It is, I think it's like on a PBS or one of those things where you basically, they show it to you on like the New York Times website or something like that. So if you search it on YouTube, you can find the full documentary for free. It's one of those things, a lot of times the documentary shorts will be available free from various outlets, a lot of times just news outlets or basic TV outlets. So just search for those, usually around the Oscars, and you can check them out. I would just look into The Incident. It's pretty great. I think it's just Incident, not The Incident. But you've got the information. You can find it. All right, that's what I have for this week. A couple good things. I would say Incident and The Rule of Jenny Penn, for me, are the ones to check out. But who knows? I didn't see all the other 10 million movies that Greg found for us, so they may have something else that just sounds fantastic there that I did not mention. We'll see you next week, and hopefully we have a lot of other good, cool movies to bring you then. Bye.